Everyone for joining. Welcome back to Salesforce Security Office Hours. And today and I'm sorry, is it Marija, right? I'm gonna is gonna be presenting how do you migrate Salesforce connected apps to external clients without breaking integration. So thank you so much for taking the time to present to everyone today. So really quick, we're going to just go through a couple things that we usually do. We'll do some intros and then we'll let you kick off the presentation for everyone. So anyway, so I'd like to get started. So what are Salesforce security office hours? Well, I'd like to say this every time, just so especially for the new people who have never joined, what this is, why it exists. Well, the thing was when I just started seeing that there were a lot of there's a lot, data breaches in the Salesforce ecosystem were increasing, not decreasing, especially last year after all the various number of organizations that were breached. And it seemed like there was just too many people that just didn't have the right avenue to get to the people to ask those questions that you need to know about to keep your Salesforce data safe. So that's why I started Salesforce Security Office Hours to help give an avenue for people so that you can get the questions and get in front of the experts you need to take action right now to help impact your organization and yourself. So that's kind of what it is. It's an open format. Anyone can, talk, ask questions. We actually encourage you to ask questions. And the most important thing is, take something actionable with you back today. And so the rules of engagement really is, like I said, just being respectful to others. And raise your hand if you have questions, but if you want, if we're not talking, feel free to ask questions. Everyone's off mute or allowed to ask questions. So about myself, my name is Matt Meyers. I'm the CEO and founder of EzProtect, certified technical architect with over 19 years experience in the Salesforce ecosystem. I'm also the author of the best-selling book, Securing Salesforce Digital Experiences. And my mission in life, or at least my professional life, is to help educate people on how to keep their data safe in Salesforce. So, Marija, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me here, Matt and Tristan. I'm excited to talk to everybody today. Hi, my name is Maria. I've been working in Salesforce ecosystem for 8+ years. Um, Mostly as I worked at many small companies as a single admin, so all over the place. Now I'm at a larger company. I mostly work on automation and then some platform stuff, including security and some digital experience stuff. So security is important to me, and has is becoming increasingly important to everybody. And I work currently at Rippling in our business systems team. I'm also Bay Area Architect Community Group co-leader, so I spend a lot of time talking to different architects, discussing these issues. So just really excited to be here with everybody.
Awesome. Well, I'm super happy to see that, the architect group has kept going on after I left. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
Glad
we
you guys
try.
took it.
We try,
Yep.
and then if they have anybody here is just a shameless little plug, working on any architect certifications, reach out. We have some study groups going on, and we'd love to have you.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great to see that because I know it kind of staggered for a little bit, but very happy that that's back. So anyway, just carrying on here. Uh, Salesforce Security Officers is supported by EasyProtect. And in case you don't know, EasyProtect helps protect customers from viruses and threats in Salesforce through virus scanning and files and URL protection. If this ever becomes something that looks of interest to you, feel free to reach out. All right. So always like to do a recap of the last week's office hours. Unfortunately, I was not feeling well, so I wasn't able to attend myself, but I heard it was a really good session on custom portal architecture. So if you want to catch last week's session, there's a QR code. Feel free to click that. Okay, and we always like to do a hot off the press every week as well. So this week, hot off the press, there were, attackers basically compromised the Axios NPM maintainer account and published two poison versions that dropped a cross-platform rat on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. So really interesting attack because this is actually an interesting thing that I've I have a blog on our site as well. I talk about is of social engineering in open source packages. And one thing to was interesting to talk about is people look at like static resources in Salesforce, for example. You upload static resources to use on your digital experience sites and other things like that, but you don't think about, well, what if that package that you had uploaded was compromised? And that's basically what happened here. And what's interesting, or not so much interesting, how that works. A lot of times with these open source packages, what people do is you takes a lot of time to get access to do it because they want to make sure that you're trusted. You're not going to put malicious code in there. So little by little you start helping out, and then they give you a little bit more access, and more access, and then all of a sudden comes along somebody potentially that might say, "Hey, let me help you out on there. I can help you out with some of your code. I can help you with your check-ins. Just give me your username and password," or their account just gets compromised themselves. And then all of a sudden, somebody that wasn't meant to gets in there and is able to put malicious code into those packages. And then as soon as someone's click says, does install npm install, then that brings that malicious code down to their machine, unless you have locked those packages so you're not upgrading your packages to automatically to that next version, which is a very much better secure way to do it, of course, is using that lock file so that it's not automatically upgrading. So you're able to test those packages to ensure that there's no threats. So so anyway, if you are affected by it, look here, click the Euro code to know a little bit more. Downgrade to Axios 1.14 or 0.13 and rotate all your credentials if you're impacted. I actually just saw another alert come out just about 10 minutes ago about this as well. So something very important to be aware about, and think about what specifically when you're uploading packages, also even to Salesforce, like your static resources. Have you vetted those packages before your developers uploaded them? That's the big question. So. All right, just our favorite slide here, or not so favorite, is this again, just to remind everyone why we're here, why we're doing this. All these logos would not, a lot of them would not be on here if people were paying more attention and doing, being more diligent in their, how they're securing their Salesforce environments. So let's hope that no one else gets on the slide next week. But now there's 2 pages apparently, so not as good as we would hope it would be. So anyway, I'm gonna pass the mic over to you, Maria, and I'll guide the slides for you. Just let me know when you want to switch slides, and let you take over.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Matt. So today we're going to talk about connecting apps and what's happening in that world. What's specifically what's new. In case there's anybody watching who's not really familiar with this. So what connected apps are is essentially a way for third-party apps to connect to your Salesforce. So if you use data loader or like anything like any other app really that you use to manipulate data with sales inside of Salesforce, or just really authenticate and by any means, you're using connected app. Um, and it's these connected apps act as sort of a digital ID, which is you store some configuration in there so that when this app reaches out to Salesforce, Salesforce knows what this app is and lets it log in and then do whatever it's intended to do. Now, you might have heard that this creation of new connected app is disabled by Salesforce and might be wondering what this is about, or you already know what it's about, but wondering what to do next and what steps to take. And that's why we're here today and what we're here to talk about. Um, there are a few reasons why Salesforce is moving away from connected apps, and they've created something new called external client apps, or ECAs, not EACs, which I've seen a lot of people mix up abbreviations online, but external connected apps is what it stands for, and this is sort of like a second generation better solution that Salesforce has come up with. So why are we talking about this now? As Matt was just talking about all of the recent breaches that happened, some of them were due to social engineering and tricking admins into installing certain apps that were malicious or compromised. And then because connected apps had this allow by default model in Salesforce, all it took was to get admin to install that app, and bad players could compromise that and steal data from Salesforce orgs. There are other reasons that we're going to cover on subsequent slides, but that's essentially why now, why that's a hot topic right now. The other thing that Salesforce is doing, it's retiring SOAP API login. And what this is, it's sort of like even older way of connecting with Salesforce, which is uh, the way that like Salesforce allowed some of the external apps to essentially almost like hard code usernames and passwords and store them. And so you can send like essentially app could log in a very similar way as a user would log in with username and password. And that's obviously not very secure. So Salesforce will be retiring that as well. Some of the apps that might be using this is like older ERP apps or like different things out there that are still in the ecosystem. So that will be retiring as well. And we should, as we migrate from connected apps, we should prepare for that migration as well. And then Salesforce support will just not be able to re-enable connected app creation in future releases. Right now, you cannot create new ones. They can still stay in your system. We'll talk about why you might want or need to keep them for a little while longer. But really, we're going to talk about how do we get this new modern way of connecting third party apps into Salesforce. Next slide, Matt. Thank you. All right, so this is a little bit of a summary of how these ECAs are different from connected apps. Default access is what we already talked about. Users could self-authorize and approve apps. With ECAs, it's closed, so admin has to specifically provide explicit approval for certain users and certain apps via profiles and permission sets. Hopefully, permission sets is is what you'll be using, and so that's one of the big difference. So, like, well, maybe it doesn't stop phishing, but makes it a little harder, at least through using connected apps. Architecture is very different. So this is one of the big things with connected apps. All of the config happens in the same place, including security configurations and as well as access and permissions, and essentially everything happens in one place. With ECAs, like developer and admin security is completely separated. It's stored in different metadata files, and only developer ones can be deployed. So this is very different. So your developer can build an app and package it, and then admin separately builds the permissions for that app and configuration of secrets and tokens. So that helps with deployment safety. And then deployment, so ECAs are built on second generation packaging, which is just a different way of deploying with CI/CD from the old first generation packaging, like the change sets that we use to deploy connected apps. And that's just moving to a modern way of doing that. All right, we can move to the next slide. So this is a little bit of an expansion of that separation of duties, like church and state, developer and admin, code and permissions are kept separately. ECAs have 5 different metadata files that build one app, but only 2 of them are packageable, which means like these are 2 the developers own, they can build up. So if you're, for example, installing a connected app through a vendor, the vendor should build, or if you're developing your own, you have this one file that's essentially like a framework of the app, where you have like all of your, like what is it, what is its name, what it does, like the main things, and then you have OAuth settings that are also built separately. But then once you like build it, package it, deploy it, once in your org, then admin takes over and they can set up policies and they can set up permissions and access to the app as needed for that org. So this is, yeah, as I said, the configuration and policies are split. And for each org that you have, you'll build your separate policies there. And this is important, like because you may have some apps connected just to your sandboxes, or if you have multi-org system, it's a very it's a lot easier to manage and in a lot more secure way. And then one thing to know this that there's a metadata file that contains secrets that should never go into source control. It should be separately for each org. So this is something like when one thing to keep in mind as we were talking about migration plan is like making sure this like this doesn't get pulled into your source ever. And then, as I already stated, access is denied by default, so the admin has to deliberately grant access and not just find out that somebody installed something 2 years ago and it's had access to org all this time. All right.
So one question for maybe everyone out there as well, just to be clear. So there is now with the ECAs a metadata that allows you to at least store the secrets in it. Is that right? What you were saying?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I know with the connected apps, those were not exposed. You couldn't get access to them, which also made it hard for deploying up to through your environment. So would that be a strategy where people could then use that in controlled ways to deploy that up the pipeline?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But of course, you don't. That's just like anything else, any other project you're still doing. You still don't check that into your repo. Keep it in maybe a secure store somewhere or something else like that, and then only have the people to have the right access to deploy that up. But that is a good way, at least, to be able to have those reproducible ways to go it up. Or if you're provisioning, maybe even provisioning sandboxes on the way down without giving your developers direct access to those secrets, right?
Yeah, so that's it. It's a separate file. We don't want it like we want it like in a just very controlled. This is it's
Yeah.
like different
So,
levels. Like it's a more granular control, right? Like it's
yeah.
access
Yeah.
to the
Can
app, but then
anyone download?
also
And so is there's and sorry, I don't, I'm still learning myself about the ECAs. That's why I'm kind of asking the questions here. So from that file, if I'm, let's say, a developer and I'm in a sandbox, and if I have admin to the org, then I would still be able to get access to that metadata, download it, and get in plain text the secrets. Is that right? Or are they encrypted? Or do you know?
I am not sure about that. I'm also
Yeah, so
discovering
that's one thing
some of
I
this
would
myself.
probably, yeah, something you should probably look into, or others
Yeah.
should look into, say like, what do they come back as unencrypted values, or are they just encrypted coming back? Like what could someone take those secrets and then use those to gain access to another org of yours? So those are some things that I would look into just to be careful of. So, and Jeff, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to come on mic and ask a question?
Yeah, so exactly what you're talking about there. So, I mean, right now you can't really deploy connected apps between because that secret and consumer key are generated within those orgs. So, is this saying that we have the ability to take an app and deploy it utilizing a consistent key and secret? To your point, you obviously want to have those somewhere else. You don't want to put those in your source code, or the ability to at least encrypt them before you put them in a source code management, so you still have the ability to rebuild your work. So we're kind of balancing here between getting between your sandboxes and your production easily, but also your backup of being able to rebuild in case of disaster recovery, and being able to still manage all those tasks.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'll let Murray, if you wanted to answer to him anything. If not, I've got a couple things.
Yeah, that's it's a really good question. As I said, like I'm also kind of like on a learning path about this myself. So thank you so much for asking. And I believe like the only things that you deploy are the sort of like a packageable types, and then you do like a different setup in each org.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I would just double check and make sure, just be careful about it are again, back to the handling of those secrets. Like, I mean, no matter what, I would never put secrets into a repo. That's actually why I think, what was it, Gainsight or one of them, that's how they got breached,
Yeah.
was because there were secrets in their repo. So I'd find another way to distribute those. So even if maybe your CI/CD tool has access to, let's say you keep them in a secret store somewhere. I think like you got AWS, you got some others. I mean, maybe not the metadata file, but maybe you could rebuild it or something that way. And that way, yeah, you could push it up without exposing those, or you just have it, locally, and then you deploy it. But then like I said, my second question is, does does do regular, how easy is it for a developer that's in that org with admin access get access to those secrets? So more so probably maybe you have, on hand somewhere your just like anywhere else, your dev ones and then your prod ones. So you wouldn't want to put your prod secrets into your sandbox because then your developers probably get access to those prod systems when
Yeah.
they shouldn't. So I just be careful on again on how you handle those secrets. Thinking about this, since Salesforce does give you the access to them, but also there's a lot of danger with that too if you don't handle them correctly. So
Yeah, and I believe this is actually, now that you said it, I believe this is controlled on the org level, right? Like this file can be deployed using metadata API, not packaged, but like there's an org wide and then user setting of like who can deploy secrets via metadata API.
yep. Well, I'll go back to the last thing I just said as far is
Yeah.
to make sure you're not using prod secrets in your dev orgs because typically your dev orgs, your developers have those have admin access and they get full access to those secrets. So, all right, we'll move on to the next slide.
Yeah, so let's talk about how to start and what to do here. So one of the things you can go to right now is you can go to setup, look at your connected apps auth usage, and then on the very right of it, there'll be either install or uninstall button. If there are any apps now with install button, that means they're being installed, they're affected by this migration. So you might want to look at them and figure out what they are and like really start from there, but then look at all of your apps. For SOAP authenticated connections, like those are the ones that we talked about, like sort of the old set and forget ones, that like a lot of legacy ERPs have this kind of approach. So really look at your logging history, look at any kind of like SOAP logins, look at any that look like they're not human patterns, like something that logs in every certain amount of time, logs in around like 24 hours, like around the clock, and then go and investigate, try to figure out what is this app, especially if there's no documentation, maybe you've inherited an org. So this is really something that should be audited now rather than later when Salesforce deprecates this and like really regularly and always ideally, but we know that's uh, sometimes wishful thinking in some orgs, but should be a standard, should be something we looked at. So just look at everything that you have in there and then document every app you have. Like figure out who's the owner, what does this do? Do we still need this? What are the scopes for oath? What is the usage? When was the last time this accessed your org? And then really purpose, like why do we have this? What does this do? Is this redundant? Like, do we still need it? And um, this is like, I love to use time framework, which like I've used for many different things and not just in Salesforce world. Just really, even when you're cleaning your closet, right? Like this is something this is just regular organizational thing. So it stands for tolerate, invest, migrate, and eliminate. So tolerate, that means like something that like you don't want to have long term, but you really need to for now. This is one of those things like, for example, you might not be able to migrate connected apps that come from ISVs, like as managed packages, because you're waiting for vendor to complete the update. So this is something that you should tolerate, but you should document like what is the migration path, see if there are any news from vendors and when they're planning on migrating, like read regularly what their plan is, figure that out. Invest is like if you're just starting here, most of us are just not gonna have anything in there. This is if you had to build something in the last few weeks, that would fall into invest bucket. It's like something that you already built an ECA. Um, Migrate, most apps will fall there. We're gonna want to migrate them. And then eliminate, retire the ones that are no longer in use or might be in use, but might not be worth keeping them in use for security reasons or cost reasons, or, well, security is a cost, but uh, various reasons of why you may not want to keep it. Just clean up, that's, and if nobody's logged in, I said the same as cleaning your closet. If you have not worn it in a year, maybe get rid of it. This is the same thing goes here. If nobody's logged in a certain amount of time, why is it there in the first place?
Yep.
Um, so this is kind of like what you can start on right away. And this will be a big chunk of this job. So it's not just going to be, you don't just click a button and migrate all of your connected apps. Like you cannot, but also if you could, maybe you shouldn't without doing this review.
Yep. And I've not heard this, but Salesforce doesn't have any timeline as far as when they're just going to say, hey, you cannot use connected apps anymore yet. Right. So I think it's the ones that are still there, you can still use, but you just won't build, you just can't install anymore or create new ones, correct?
Yeah, you cannot create any new ones anymore.
Yep.
I don't know if there are any exceptions for any large companies or anything like that that Salesforce does, but standard is you cannot
Yep,
create any new
exactly.
ones.
And even like with vendors that are using managed packages, still even if they're an ECA could still be used, even if they're using a connected app today, as long as you set it up correctly, because it's still OAuth under the covers. I've done that with a couple as well. So even if your vendor says, hey, you have to use a connected app, and you can say, no, we're going to use an ECA, and then you just figure out how to set it up, the ECA with what their app is using. That's another way around it. But also at the same time, connected apps are not, per se insecure, just like anything else in Salesforce, provided that you've configured them correctly, locked them down correctly. That's kind of the thing. But ECAs are just a much better way to handle it because it's a lot cleaner, and Salesforce has thought about it a lot, further. And it's the way of the future. So I think that's just, I would say, the way to think about them.
Yeah, yeah, right.
So, all
All right.
right, next slide.
Box. So start a new sandbox, right? Or refresh the ones that you have. Do this in sandbox first. That's a don't just go in prod and start clicking buttons without reviewing this. It's just goes without saying, but also worth saying. I feel like every time. For a lot of like modern local apps, like more recent ones, you might be able to use the internal migration. I have not used this for any of my app yet. Still kind of trying to decide if we want to do it in like for the real use case outside of just a trailhead and training. And this is irreversible. You cannot move it back. So again, try it in sandbox first. Um, if this migration is not supported for like these like complex multi-org apps or some managed packages that don't have like they're not ready for this migration, this won't be Salesforce smart enough not to allow it. So it shouldn't break anything too bad, but shouldn't doesn't mean it won't. So there we'll talk in the next slide of what to test for. Um, and then some of the flows are not, some of the kind of older flows are not, those flows are not supported in ESAs yet. So you might need to rewrite them, rewrite into new apps. So you might not be able to migrate every app. And again, like there just won't be like the button to do it. You won't be allowed to do it if you try to do it. Um, Check out your CI/CD pipelines, like we talked about secrets file, and like it even though and make sure like your permissions are set up, and then you just can't deploy new connected app anymore, or like you cannot create any new ones. So make sure that's updated. This is a good time to standardize naming conventions, right? Like with any cleanup and anything starting new. Again, going back to documenting everything that you do, since you're already doing this review, make sure you document it and document your decisions. So why are you migrating? Why are you holding? Why are you getting rid of something? So that when it's reviewed again, or if somebody else has to continue, this is logged somewhere.
Yep.
All right. And then again, just don't just copy paste. Not that you can exactly copy paste, but don't just migrate things without further think about the scope, think about what it grants before we migrate. Like, does this app really need to do? Like, does it really need all of this access? What does it need to be able to do? Look into that principle, minimum privilege. Always good to keep in mind when you're doing anything. So this ECAs will allow you to be more granular there as well. And then if something's broken or something's not working as expected, you can always expand access versus, just broad allow it and then run into issues. Assign access via permission sets. This is a big difference. You have to specifically give access via permission sets. When you create new ECA, it's not just going to work for your users. You can do it via profile, but you shouldn't really, should migrate to permission sets for this. Now is a good time. And I know that's a huge migration for many users, but you start small with new things and then eventually migrate other permissions there as well. Document. I feel like I have that on every slide, but it's never it's never too much to say that. So just document, please. There's no excuse not to document anymore with AI tools and modern tools that we have. It's faster than ever, easier than ever. So really no excuse not to do it. All right, here's some checkpoints, what your migration slate looks like once you start, in 30 days. No new connected apps have been created. You really cannot. This is this is a given. Salesforce put a hard stop, but that's as of spring 26. You tested your pipelines. You make sure you test connectivity. You make sure your app can connect, but you also make sure it cannot do what it's not supposed to do. Make sure you do both positive and negative testing. When you do this, every connected app is owned, categorized, documented, and then some failure scenarios will be tested. Are there expired tokens? Is their access been revoked? Something that we haven't configured properly so that app cannot connect. Or maybe it connected once and then it failed the next time. So just make sure you check multiple times for every app you migrate. Make sure it works correctly. So nothing you don't have silent failures with connectivity once you've migrated. So that's 30 days, at least for the ones that you mark as migrate. This should be a mark for that. And then onto the next slide, in 6 months, start getting ready for SOAP retirement. It's summer 27, but it will come here fast. Those can be hard to track down and go down rabbit holes to figure out what are all of these apps connecting, especially if there's no documentation. Just start make sure your deployment work correctly, your review, scope and setting changes. Token lifetimes are configured based on risk decisions or how frequently they get refreshed. You don't just carry over from your connected apps. And then periodic review is on your calendar. So if you're SOC 2 company, you may already have some of these schedule user access permissions on your calendar. Look into app access as well when you do that, if you're not already, and just really regularly audit and make sure there's nothing on that list that's not in your documentation that you don't know what it does and how it connects to your system.
Yep. And one of the things I've been starting to recommend to people as well is as part of all these reviews, you keep an asset inventory of a lot of different things. One of the things that you should be keeping in the asset inventory are two things. One is your installed packages in your org. Who's the owner of the package? What that package is for? Why was it installed? Because I think a lot of times you even look at the installed packages and you're like, what is that? Who was it? What kind of data are they accessing? Do they have, is it external data flowing out? Or is it only, completely self-contained in Salesforce? So a lot of that stuff documenting, even in the same thing, those providers, do they have, if the data is going out, do you have a current ISO or SOC type 2 when was the last time you did a security review on those organizations? So these are other things that you should do. The other thing I'm saying people keep on is that inventory of your connected apps / your ECAs. Why does that exist? Who owns it? Same kind of deal, so that you can have those those inventories now, and you can keep that that running tally, so you know exactly what's in your org, especially for the stuff that has that access to external data. Because a lot of, I mean, I think most people I ask to and talk to, they look at their org and they don't know what all these different connections they have are, which is kind of scary because it's like that's people that have access to your data. So
Yeah, no, exactly. That's it's an important, like managed package are like a great idea. Like another thing is like, especially for managed packages, like why is it like on 12 versions ago? Kind of making sure you keep them updated. You should already be doing that on regular cadence. So add the review of ECAs as well to that cadence
yeah,
moving forward.
exactly. And then also one other thing I was going to say here on this slide too is that for the SOAP API login, I mean, I think just try to do an audit before that 6 months comes to see which integrations you still have left using that. I mean, start thinking about what are your legacy apps that you have out there that have been around for a long time. They're probably potentially using the SOAP API still and probably the login method still. I mean, I'm sure there's apps I wrote 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there's probably still running in organizations I was at where I wrote SOAP API with username, password, login, where we used to think that was a good idea years ago until we know better now. But I would say like just start doing those audits now just to understand and catalog and inventory which ones still are using that so you can create that migration plan. So,
Yeah, try not
all
to
right.
get to the point where you have to cut the access and then see who complains.
Yeah, exactly.
So, um, and yeah, just to summarize some of the key things we said, this is not just compliance. Don't just migrate because you have to now. Well, you don't really have to migrate yet, but you will eventually. So don't just migrate because you have to. Think about security, think about why you're doing it, how you're doing it, what access you give, minimum principal, minimum privileges. Think about all of that. This is not lift and shift. You just don't click a button and all of your connected apps just become ECAs. It really requires thoughtful approach, audit, categorization, decision making, time framework. Um, and then some of the immediate next steps you can take, you can start the audit today, tomorrow, sooner rather than later. Spin out a sandbox, start playing around with this, start testing migrations, assign integration testing owners. Like most of us don't have 5 connected apps. We have tens, hundreds, I don't know, many. So figure out who's going to test each integration and make sure who are your counterparts and owners of these integrations. Make sure it works correctly. Schedule some of the deployments, schedule quarterly review of your apps, and just document everything. Please document everything.
Yep.
All
All
right.
right. Great. And our favorite slide here, only you can prevent and contain data breaches in Salesforce. Thank you, Cody and Astro. Um, all right, great. Well, and thank you again, Maria. This was a great session, and I know I mean this topic keeps coming up over and over, and I so it'll keep coming up more. So thank you for taking the time again. And I don't know if if any of you are going to be at TDX, I'm going to be speaking as well on a little bit more about an agent force and how you can protect your data agent force. So if you are at TDX. You can catch me on the 15th talking about that. And if not, then I we will see you on the next office hours as well. So as always, we have some other resources. As of course, we've got my book here. We've got some security resources, the office hours videos on YouTube. At this point, we're open for questions. Does anyone have any questions that we have not for Maria or myself or anything else before we wrap up?
Probably not as much a question, but more a statement. What we kind of approach with this is, following what you had indicated, but we broke it up into 2 steps. So that first step, when you were talking about the connected apps, where there's a bunch of them in there that aren't even installed or need to have that installed next to it, I basically directed our team that said, either install it or block it. So that way you at least have controls over who's using it, because right now you have no controls. It's just whatever. So basically, looking at the set of users, we determined a time frame. But we said if nobody's logged into this in a year, then block it. We can always go back if somebody needs it and redo it. If somebody has been logged in, then we installed it, and then we went in and we set got a permission set that allowed that, and then assigned it to the people who had used it most recently. While we figured out what was it really doing and what did we want to do, we wanted to at least put a hard stop on it. So we, in production, right away, just said either block or install every app that's in there. And then later on, we'll figure out which ones we move to ECAs, figure out whether we keep it going. But that way you have more controls, because you have no control right now on any of those that say install. Just
Yeah.
wondering your thoughts on that. I mean, that in that particular thing, there was a couple of them that required people to relog in. Basically, it says you shouldn't have to reauth if you do that, but some of them had to relog in. But that's not a bad thing to make them log into an application to make sure that they've got a more current connection to do those.
Yeah, just don't do it on the last day of a quarter.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so, I mean, so some of that also, if you got an app that you don't know what it's doing and it's that critical, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, you don't want to do it and cause problems, but because it was such anybody who had an access into Salesforce could connect any app they wanted and start pulling data out. So starting to get that understanding of what is really going on in these things.
Mhm. Oh
Was
yeah, and
kind
also
of
to
key.
think about, like, I mean, you think about, okay, well, I'm gonna people if we shut off the apps now, people are going to complain, we're going to get support tickets, it's going to look bad, but at the same time, the $200 million data breach looks even worse.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the lens I say is like, what's worse? Having, some people call in and say, I can't access this, and they say, okay, great, I know now, so then we turn it back on, or getting a data breach and getting your logo plastered all over the news everywhere.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the lens you should look at it. And also, of course, the damage. Think of it, it's not just about data breach to your company, it's typically real people like you and me that get hurt. You're imagining, people lose their entire life savings because of data breaches and things like that. So that's really what you're protecting in the end, is really people. And so you need to really, think about that when you're going through this. And so I think it's, that use zero trust. If you don't know what that is, and you don't have an idea of what that is, then block it until you do. And I think that's really the best guide to say, granted, sometimes you don't have that ability to make that decision yourself, but that's the guidance I would give someone.
Right. If you've not
Yeah,
done
sorry.
this,
Yeah.
once you block it, it drops to the bottom of the list. It indicates
Yep.
that it's blocked, but it still sits there. So you know what was in there before. So it's not like you lose it and somebody comes and says, now how do I get back? So you can always recover if you have to. So just keep that in mind.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Mark, you want to ask a question?
I
Yeah,
was just gonna
yeah,
add like one second thing, sorry. But I meant
Yeah.
like don't wait last day of the quarter. I meant there are 30 days until last day of a quarter. So block it now before it
Yeah,
gets
that's true. That's true.
there. Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
yeah. Thank you. So did I see a slide earlier where there was like a migration tool that is it possible like there's a tool to migrate a connected app to an external client app? Because I'm not seeing it in my sandbox, but maybe there's something wrong in my sandbox. So
That's the like install button, right? Is what I was talking about. Like you can install it again.
oh,
Yeah, I think there was this thing in the slide. I think I saw it too. There was something that said like migrate your ECA to, so connected app to an ECA.
Yes. Sorry, let me look at what I meant there. And as I said, I have not tried to use that. I think I found that on Salesforce Trailhead somewhere. So let me get back to you on that, where
yeah,
that is,
it's
because like I could
yeah.
not find it either in my org.
Yeah, in your one of your slides, the
Yeah,
title says migration sequence. The second bullet point says for modern local apps, open the connected app in App Manager, select migrate to external client app. This is irreversible. So it might vary by the app. A newer app might have it where maybe it,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Sorry, like
very
that's like,
possible. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Let me get back to you on that because I have the screenshot of that somewhere. All right.
We do have one question, y'all, from Joseph in the Q&A.
All right. Oh, sorry. Let's pull that up there. Joseph is asking, is there any mitigation advice you'd have within the lens of a consultancy working with smaller clients? So our clients typically work with ticketing connectors they're lagging behind making the transition to ECAs. So is there any specific advice you would like to give for that?
Uh, that I would say we probably have to rebuild it, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the way I would answer that myself is, I mean, first, a lot of the most times, unless they're using a really old version of that's not supported by ECAs, you could build an ECA that would still work with that application versus a connected app. I mean, don't delete it first because you can't create a new connected app, but see if you can create an ECA that'll connect with it. That's the first thing I would say. I mean, sometimes you just out of luck if that's the case, and then it's really a decision you need to make whether or not you can or continue with that vendor. Also, as we said, that connected apps are themselves are not completely or not insecure. It's just really how you configure them. If you've locked them down, then they're perfectly fine. It's just that they're dangerous because they let people install them before, but now Salesforce has those permissions. But as you said, you cannot in going forward if you have a vendor who has a connected app, it's not going to be able to be installed in your org because Salesforce is now blocking that. So you will need to either have an ECA or that vendor's not going to be able to really sell to anyone really going forward in the future. So I think by nature of it, eventually it's going to work itself out. But until then, your main option really is to see if you can create an ECA that'll work with it if you don't have any other choice.
Yeah, and some more context around that is in a lot of these ticketing connectors, how to put this delicately, they don't follow best practices. It's kind of cobbled together. It's not, there's lots of things I wish they would change. So swapping ticketing connectors is like a complete non-starter. This is core to their business. This is arts,
Mhm.
culture, entertainment. Like swapping is a monumental task. So it's kind of one of those things where they're between a rock and a hard place of, okay, if the ECA doesn't work for them, we're in trouble here. Um, so yeah, we're trying to
Yeah.
get each of our ticketing partners as much information and make that transition to make this compatible and within best practices as possible. But like, what
I,
little can we control
I
on the client side?
Yeah, I don't think too much if they can't support if the ECAs don't support that. I mean, is it that I mean, is it just that they don't have that many customers using Salesforce and it's just this like thing they had to do? Because it seems like if they have more enough customers using Salesforce, then the market will push them to move faster.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of them, their primary customers are on Salesforce. But yes, I agree, it should, but it's so far I haven't seen that forward movement. It's a little
Yeah.
baffling,
I-
but
Oh, yeah. I think it's as it gets closer to that date, it probably will, because otherwise everyone's going to break and every one of their customers is going to break. Until then,
right.
it's kind of like don't delete the don't delete the app. I think his because until you know it works. I mean, so try to connect with them. I mean, at least in a sandbox, you can clone the sandbox and it'll come back again. So I'd say try to see if you can set up an ECA that'll work with them in the sandbox and do that now. So that way, if you do run into that issue, then you'll at least know what you know if it works or it doesn't work. That I think that's really your best bet with them without knowing much more about how their systems work.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And I linked the documentation for the migration tool. Apparently, Salesforce says you'll like when you go to App Manager, you'll be able to see a button. I don't see it in my org or on any of my apps yet. I don't know if they're all not qualify for migration, or this is not live yet. But if anybody's had luck with this or has luck with this in the future, let us know.
Doing an AI search on that, it says there is no tool. Don't
Yeah.
automatically move it. I mean, that's as good as what it can look at, but
Yeah.
it doesn't find one either. So
Yeah. No, it's like in Salesforce release notes that Help Center, it says that this exists, but I have not seen it yet.
Yeah,
So
I could have sworn
apologies
I
if
saw it somewhere,
that was
but I don't
misleading.
know.
I was going off of Salesforce's documentation.
Well, yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go there. So, does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap up? You can ask about anything. We don't have any, nothing's off limits or almost nothing.
well, so I guess Matt, again, if no one's
Yeah.
got a question, the last person who was talking about maybe not being able to go to an ECA, I mean, at a minimum, through installing the connected app, through limiting it to a permission set that you put on a particular user, and then going to that particular user and putting in a profile with locked down IP addresses. I mean, in essence, you could make a connected app pretty secure
Yep, exactly.
following all those steps if they can't do something else. And if they can't provide you a small set of IPs that their application uses anyway, then you ought to question their connection and what's there anyway. So I mean, that's another approach you could do, is just say, okay, we can't switch it to an ECA, but give me the 1 to 5 IPs that you're going to connect over, and I'm going to limit you down to those, so at least somebody can't steal the credentials and come in from somewhere else.
Yep, exactly. I think there's things you can do. It's just a matter of, and back to what Joseph was saying here. It's like those providers themselves sound like they're not following Salesforce best practices as well. So sometimes, it depends on, it's a business decision. Like you're saying, do you like Maria was saying earlier, is it something you're going to tolerate? You're just going to accept the risk, or is it going to be enough? Is it so much of a risk to your business that stop using them? Which it sounds like in the case it's not that in this case, but hopefully you're able to at least lock them down by the IP or using permission sets, and then by the time that Salesforce does shut everything off, they've had enough people putting enough pressure on them to make that change. Or worst case, Joseph, you go back to, just connect to their APIs, use the REST API and rebuild it yourself. Anyway. All right. I think that's it, everyone. We're out of time. Thank you again for joining, and we'll see you next time after TDX.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Thanks. Thanks again, Maria. Bye.